I've been told that a fine wine, not just any wine, but a fine wine can complement a meal. I've also been told that certain wines are good for you. In fact, if you're a person who has high blood pressure, certain red wines can lower your blood pressure, I've been told. So now, what exactly is a fine wine? Are the things that I've been told about wine true? We're going to find out. The Fermented Grape, coming soon on Outdoor Madness.
Okay, so you've seen the trailer, right? The Fermented Grape. Well, I am very happy to say that we finally finished the production of the Fermented Grape. It took a long time, but it was worth it. We traveled from Temecula all the way to Santa Cruz. We stopped at different wineries. We did a lot of wine tasting. We just had a lot of fun. All the episodes of Outdoor Madness that I do, I love them. But this one, it was just special. It really was. So you guys are going to learn something. You're going to laugh. You're going to have a lot of fun also. Now, I want you to picture this for a minute. You're with your friends. You're going out to dinner, all right? Seafood, steak, whatever. Well, everyone decides to order a glass of wine. But now, you know you don't really like wine. Okay, you know, they're getting rosés, they're getting Merlots, Zinfandels. So you don't want to be the only one to sit there with a Midori sour, maybe a pina colada, a margarita. So what do? You cough up $12 for a glass of rosé. You drink it, but you hate it, right? Now, let me just kind of show you what I'm getting at here. Just to give you an idea of what my wife and I like, okay? Here's a bottle, 2016 rosé, all right? I don't really like it, but my wife loves it. Now, here's Manischewitz blackberry wine. Actually, $2 was on sale at Bevmo, okay? I love this stuff, all right? Now, here's another bottle that we just purchased from one of my favorite wineries, the Dofo Winery right here in Temecula. Now this is a port, 95 bucks, expensive, but let me tell you, every drop of this stuff is worth it. I mean, it tastes so good, you could pour it on vanilla ice cream and just, But now here's what we're gonna find out today. What makes a wine a fine wine, okay? This $2 bottle of wine, could it be considered a fine wine, or is it just some cheap bottle of wine, all right? This one right here, is this a fine wine? Does an expensive bottle of wine mean that it's a fine wine? Now, I'll tell you, I've been called everything in the book when it comes to alcohol. A lightweight, which I am. I am a lightweight, a wimp. But I've also been told that I need to acquire a taste for different types of alcohol. But here's my question. Why should I have to acquire a taste for something that I don't like? So if you're the type of person where you're sitting around that table and everyone's ordering these different wines, but you know you're not going to like it, should you feel embarrassed to get something that you like because maybe you think it's cheap? Well, that's what we're going to find out on today's show. So you ready? We're going to start off at one of the wineries just really close to here. It's in Escondido, California. It's called the Deer Park Winery / Auto Museum. You're gonna love this place.
you're at Deer Park, you don't even know you're at a winery. The collection of vintage memorabilia that the owner has, it's unbelievable. He has everything from neon signs to cars from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. I believe he has 3 buildings just jam-packed with all these antiques, bicycles. And he has this one section that has all these old dolls that are just, it just blows you away. I was amazed. If you're into classic cars, forget about the wine. Just come here and check out the collection that the owner has. It'll blow you away. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! Talk about a collection. Wow! That was worth it right there. But you haven't seen anything yet. We have another building to go into. Let's go! This is the kind of Cadillac my dad had right here. I still remember we used to take this thing to a meeting when we were kids, and the window was broke out of it, and he couldn't afford to get it fixed, so we would freeze our butts off going to the meeting. Now, if you guys remember earlier, I told you that I was told that I need to acquire a taste for different alcohol. I was also told that it's a good thing to expand your palate. Now, there's a big difference there. Acquiring a taste for alcohol is like you something that you don't like, you just keep drinking it, trying it until finally you say, well, you know what? Stuff isn't too bad. But expanding your palate is, it's just like when you're wine tasting. You're tasting different wines until you finally find one that you like and possibly purchase it. Or maybe a dessert wine like this, you try it with chocolate. Or you try a certain wine like this, or this with a meal. You see, it gives it, or with a certain meal, it gives it a whole different taste. So what we did recently was really neat. Got together with the family, we had dinner, and we did our own wine tasting. Now, some of you might have done this before, but
the way we did this, it was like a game. So some of the members in the family purchased wine. And it was a total of 5 bottles altogether. You notice here that the bottles were covered and they were numbered 1 through 5. Well, those who were doing the wine tasting didn't know who purchased what and what type of wine they were tasting. So we had these cards, and on these cards what you do is, Sean, you can see here, he goes around and he was pouring a little bit of wine in each person's glass. And as you taste that wine, what you do is you smell it. And as you're smelling it, you see what type of aroma that you smell. Maybe you smell maple. Maybe you smell oak. Maybe you smell pine. And if it's something you don't even recognize, you look on the card, and the card has different things written down, and maybe what you're smelling is on the card, so you write that down. And then you write down what you taste. Maybe you taste, who knows, burnt rubber. Maybe you taste some type of like a smoky taste, you know, but it's really fun to do. And what happens is, at the end, whichever wine got the most likes, so maybe it was number 5 or number 4, well, whoever bought that bottle of wine is the one who wins. So it's really neat to do, something you guys should try. It's a fun way to taste different wines, and it's a neat way to expand your palate. Now here's something I never knew. I always thought that you had to go out to a winery or out to like a vineyard to do wine tasting, but you don't. We went to Santa Cruz, so if you take a look right here, this spot right here in Santa Cruz, we spent pretty much, I would say, half of the day here tasting wine and tasting beer. And there's a brewery here where they brew their own beer. And me personally, I'm 59 years old. To this day, I have never found a beer that I like. I just can't stand beer. But now when I went to this place, they let you sample the beer, and it's beer that they brew right here. Fresh, organic beer. Okay, it's the Santa Cruz Mountain Brewing Company, and I actually found a beer here that I liked. We're going to go in here later on, and I'll show you what I like, what I found here. But I believe there was 3 different wineries here. But like I said, we spent most of the day here tasting wine, just speaking to people, and this is where I got my first answer to the question, what wine is a fine wine? How do you determine if a cheap bottle of wine or an expensive bottle of wine is a fine wine? So watch this. Now, is that just water you're putting in there? Or?
No, that's acid.
Oh, that's acid.
Needs a little extra acid for...
Okay.
So this is Tempranillo fruit that we picked on Friday morning, early Friday morning. And it goes through the crusher destemmer machine, which automatically takes the stems off. They come flying out one end, and then the crushed juice goes in right into the bin. This bin will sit right under the machine when it's running.
Okay.
And so that sort of takes care of the romantic foot trotting that everybody talks about with winemaking.
Okay.
Takes the stems off, crushes it into juice. And then with red wine, all the flavors, colors, everything come from the skin, not the pulp and the juice. So it's important, while it's sitting in this soup of juice, skin, seeds, to stir it periodically to keep things sort of all mixed in. This isn't quite fermenting yet. This is still pretty much 100% grape juice. It's slowly starting to ferment. We're doing this one on native yeast. We're not adding yeast, so it'll just slowly start on its own. And we go through once or twice a day and do this stirring of the skins back in. When it's fermenting, the skins will be riding up about this high. They'll be all pushed to the top of the fermenter by the CO2 bubbles being given off. And it makes a really hard cap, and it's called, the French for it is interpreted as punching the cap.
Okay.
So you have to come through and punch the skins back in. It can get to where even in this small bin, it takes all my body weight to get through it.
Wow.
So in that situation, the skins are pretty much all on top, not in the juice at all. And if you let it stay that way, you get a much lighter wine than if you come through and periodically just manually punch those skins back in. So it's sort of like stirring the coffee grounds on a French press, you know, that kind of thing, where you get more extract.
Yeah. Now, while you're doing this, I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
You know how you hear people say sometimes that you've got certain wines and then you have wines that they call are a fine wine? Okay. So what I'm trying to do is I'm getting different opinions from the different wine makers and wineries. What would you say would separate, let's say, a regular wine from a fine wine? Or what's your opinion on that?
The one that you think is the fine wine.
Just whatever's good to you, right?
Good to you, because that's all that matters. Americans have been too hung up too much about what they should and should not like. You know, what should I be tasting in this wine? And my answer is, what are you tasting in this wine? Do you like it?
Yeah.
You know, it's a very personal decision. It's like, you know, what's your favorite song? You can't criticize someone's favorite song as being wrong, because taste is taste. So in terms of fine wine, now there's certain wines, if you're drinking with a group of people, you probably will come to some kind of consensus. It's like, well, you know, the group kind of thought this one over here was the one that we liked the least.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, you'll have different tastes that like different things. So, so there is no, that it's a very personal definition in my mind.
Okay.
What a fine wine is.
Good.
We've been around since 1975. And personally, I've been with the brand. This is my 40th harvest season.
Okay.
So I came as a student at UCSC to bottle one day and never left.
Wow.
So I worked with the founder for 25 years in what became an old-fashioned apprenticeship without us ever calling it that. And then when he fully retired in 2004, I took it over.
Okay.
So I've never written a resume, I've never filled out a job application. Seems to be what my job is.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So what kind was that?
This one?
Yeah.
It is the Boardwalk Blonde. It's good. It's not as strong as I thought.
Yeah.
A little bit of sweet, but kind of strong. Good.
Finished product. Thank you.
Boom.
Just like that. Finally, after all these years, I found a beer that I love. Alden's Radical Redwood Root Beer. What is this?
This is the Swift Street Amber Ale.
Amber Ale.
Fermented within it is not bad.
That's not bad.
I told you that.
All right, we're rolling. All right, you guys, you know what's going on here. I'm on a quest to find out what defines a wine, okay? What makes a fine wine different from any other wine? So we got a group of guys here who call themselves the Hairy Man's Club, all right? So we want you to meet them. We're gonna start over here. You are?
Sean.
I'm Chuck.
Jonathan.
Elmer.
The Hairy Man's Club. Let's give it up for these guys. The Hairy Man's Club. All right. We're going to start with Sean. So, Sean, how do we know what's a fine wine, or what makes a wine a fine wine?
Well, fine wine, in my opinion, is whatever particular wine you enjoy. Everybody has a different palate, everybody has a different taste. So what's good to me may not be fine to someone else. So whatever you particularly enjoy is a fine wine.
That's a good answer. All right, let's get Chuck. What do you think, Chuck?
I have to agree with Sean, and I think it's because we were trained by the same wine connoisseur. There's really no such thing as a bad wine. It's all purely subjective. Whatever you enjoy is what you enjoy, and so that makes it a good wine for you.
Oh, you see, you guys were learning something. You didn't know you could learn something from these guys, did you? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Jonathan.
Fat chance.
What do you think, Jonathan?
Really, I mean, I can't say much more than they. I mean, there are wines that they like that I don't, and there are wines that I like that they don't. You know, so again, it comes down to what you prefer.
All right, Greg. What do you
What I
think?
look for in a fine wine is those silky tannins.
The silky tannins, huh?
That's right, very important. And that musky anal aroma is very important. It's very important too. If it doesn't have that musky anal aroma, then
All right.
I just
Let's
spit
get a little
it out
hairy
and
down
say,
there.
next!
Let's get a little hairy down there.
All right, you
He's
guys.
honest.
At least he's honest, okay? All right. Now, one other thing, what you guys don't know is this guy right here makes his own wine. Tell us a little about what you do and how you got into it. Then another question from all you guys: how did this hairy man's thing start? So first of all, let's talk a little bit about your wine and what you do when you make your wine.
Well, the gentleman that Chuck mentioned really got me into making wine. We were going to make it together, and so you know, circumstances happened. He didn't get a chance to do that, so I went out and bought a wine kit, a bucket, a few other little things, and some Welch's grape wine from the store.
Welch is great, really?
Yep. That
Wow.
was the first batch of wine. I put a punching balloon on top to tell if it's going to ferment. The balloon will blow up.
Okay.
So sleeping one night, about 2:30 in the morning, you hear a huge bang. Well, it was fermenting. It exploded the balloon
Oh wow.
in my bathtub. So that was my first experience with making wine.
Oh man, that's neat. All right. Okay, so tell us a little bit about this Hairy Man's Club. Who started this whole thing?
I think Sean's wife started it.
Your wife, huh?
Well, yeah.
I just showed up one day and
Here's a t-shirt.
Sean hands me this hairy man's t-shirt, or was it your wife that handed it to us? Huh?
Well, that's what the wives used to call it. They would say, "Yeah, you hairy men go out on your trip." And so my wife made these shirts up for us. Got them all designed up.
Lean back, John. Give a look at these shirts here. The
That's
Hairy
a
Man's
surprise.
trip. That was a surprise, huh?
Yep.
All right, so let me ask you guys this: where have you guys been on your trips? Tell us some of the places you guys have been.
Well, me and Sean, we've been a lot of places, from Temecula all the way up to Napa, Russian River area, and pretty much everywhere in between. Santa Barbara County, all over California is really where we've been. And I know Sean's been to some places in Europe as well.
Oh wow, that's pretty
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
What about you guys? You guys been with them to these places too?
I don't think I've ever been to Napa, but I've been to Sonoma.
You have been to Napa. We took you to Napa. We went to Chateau Montelena.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was.
That's Napa.
Okay, so we did. So I'm not gonna go there.
What about you, Greg?
So I'm gonna be.
Temecula.
Well, I've never been to Napa.
You've been to
But I sort of
Temecula.
like the music.
The fermented
Paso
grape.
Robles, I think we did some wine tasting with Sean in Ventura County. There were some places we've been to. And Temecula. And that's about it. I'm a very callow fellow as far as.
Me and Stephanie went to, when we were in the Midwest in Illinois, we went to a winery there. And I have one thing to say about the Illinois winery.
Oh man! All right, you guys. So there you have it.
In my taste.
The Hairy Man's Club giving us their different definition on what's a fine wine. So on our trip, like I said earlier, we started from Temecula, went all the way to Santa Cruz. Well, we stopped in Solvang. And while we were in Solvang, there were a couple of wineries we stopped at. But while we were there, we're walking around and I noticed these trucks going down the street, and these trucks were full of grapes. So I started thinking to myself, they must be harvesting. And so I remember talking to Karen and I was like, we got to get someone to let us film the harvesting. Maybe not actually from the field, but at least when they do the de-stimming. So I couldn't find anyone there. In fact, there's a lot of places that just don't want that camera. You know, and I understand that. You know, a lot of people are camera shy and they don't want to really be on camera. So one of my favorite wineries, once again, the Dofo Winery, Moto Dofo Winery, just right here in Temecula. The only winery that actually let me film the de-stimming process. And now, from what they tell me, they're the only winery that has a 3-step process when it comes to taking the stems off the grape. So they let me film, they let other people come in and watch them. And another thing about the Moto Dofo Winery that I loved, they're the only winery that has 4 port wines that you can actually taste. Most of the wineries we went to didn't have any of them. Some of them had 1, but most of them didn't have any ports. And for me, it wasn't that good because that's the type of wine I like the best. Not only that, but it's right there in the name, Moto Dofo. Family owned. All of these guys are into motorcycles and they race. So when you're there, you're just surrounded by all these vintage motorcycles. They're outside, they're in the barrel room. In fact, when you go inside the barrel room, you're just surrounded by them and there's live music in there. You can actually eat in the barrel room, and they call it that because they actually have some barrels of wine in there that are aging. But I got to give thanks right now. Moto Dofo Winery in Temecula, you guys are the bomb. Thank you so much for putting up with us at Outdoor Madness and letting us get in there and film. All right, so you can see the tubs here, you guys, full of grapes, ready to be sorted. Now earlier I mentioned that it was a 3-step de-stimming process. Well, it's actually called a 3-step sorting process. We're going to take a look at that right now.
Okay, so I'll explain. What we're looking for is unripe cluster. So a ripe cluster, see the color? See that, nice and even? Unripe cluster. See that? So it's not hard, you just gotta be fast. And then we're also pulling out leaves. So if we see leaves or strawberries. So what happens is it goes through this. This is the first sorting table.
So there you have it, guys. The Fermented Grape is a wrap. Thanks goes out to everyone who helped with this episode. It was so much fun. Special thanks goes out to the Santa Cruz Mountain Brewing Company in Santa Cruz, California. Also, the Santa Cruz Mountain Vineyard for helping us on the port wine fermentation. All your guys' information was so helpful. We thank you so much. I'm Kerry Clark for Outdoor Madness. And remember everyone, always drink in moderation. We'll see you next time.